Hey, and welcome back to Talk of Better Worlds. I'm Sir Felix the Cat, and this is Nerd Talk Thursday. So, to continue our conversation on the state of gaming, I felt it's time for me to start paying respect to Nintendo, one of my favorite companies for video games. I mean, I shouldn't like any company, but this is Nintendo. I do like what they put out. And they are one of the original game companies, technically being around since 1889, just under a slightly different name. Still said Nintendo, though. Anyways, let's get into this. So, E.T. is one of the major contributing factors to the big Western gaming video game crash that we had. That was back in 1983. And that was a pretty dark time, and in America, it pretty much looked like, hey, this fad known as video games is going to be over. But then came along Nintendo, who in 1985 and 1986, respectively, they did launch in different countries. I think it was Japan first and then us in 86, something like that. Anyways, they came out with the Nintendo Entertainment System, which just brought new life into the home console gaming market. And this was pretty much the biggest turnaround point, or biggest upheaval, I should say, in the video game industry at that moment. So this came out, and it was in the 8-bit era, and it came out with some bangers. It had the original Super Mario Brothers. It had Duck Hunt, which you could eventually get as a combo with the two. They had Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, Tetris, the original Legend of Zelda, plus the second one, the Adventures of Link. They had some pretty solid games on there. And that would last for quite a while. I mean, like I said, that dropped in 85, 86. And we didn't get the next thing until 1989. And that was the original Game Boy that most people refer to as the Brick. And this also brought a whole new craze to gaming. Once the Brick dropped, we had some pretty basic games. Like we had the Super Mario Land, Super Mario Land 2, the 7 coins. But later on in its lifespan, we got some bangers. We got Pokemon Red and Blue and Yellow. We had a new series that came out. Like Pokemon, from that moment on, took over the world. I can remember it myself being roughly about 10 years old. I was on a field trip going to some, I believe it was an aquarium or something like that. And we had assigned seating on the bus. And the kid sitting next to me pulled out his Game Boy and started playing this crazy looking RPG with these crazy looking monsters. And from that moment on, I was hooked. Like that was the game of the moment. And yeah, for them, that would carry on for quite a while. Then there's the Super Nintendo, which released in 1991. This is when we finally hit the 16-bit era. And we had more bangers, and this is the point where I think Mario kind of just fully cemented himself as being the permanent mascot of Nintendo. The top games released for the SNES is Super Mario World, Super Mario All-Stars, which is a combination game that contains the original Super Mario Brothers 2, 3, and the Lost Levels, or Lost Worlds. And then we also got introduced to a throwback character. We had Donkey Kong Country. Originally, Donkey Kong was a bad guy. He was the one, well, that's where it gets controversial. Let's go into this a little bit. In the original game, you play as Super Jumpman, which is Mario. And you're trying to save the princess from Donkey Kong. And it seems like, Mario's the hero because he's the guy with the hammer trying to save the princess. But in the original booklet, if you read it, Super Jumpman at the time was abusive, like to his pet Donkey Kong. So, I mean, really, Donkey Kong was just doing what anybody would do. They lash back. I mean, he kidnapped somebody, which is bad, but they're both kind of a bad guy in that game. It's kind of crazy. But anyways, let's move back on. But he got his own game, Donkey Kong Country. This would spark a new craze in platforming games. This is a quicker platformer than Mario. A lot more intricate jumps, different characters, like different play styles, essentially. It was an interesting time. That game was all of them. Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 were all on the SNES, and they were all crazy hard. I mean, you get better as you play, but if you go back to being a kid at that time, and you first played it, if you're telling me that game was easy, you're lying. Just facts. Anyways, moving on. In 1995, Nintendo dropped the headache simulator that's also known as the Virtual Boy. And it just flopped onto the market and died pretty much on impact. It was hard to look at. It was red screens, red lines. It was a headset thing. It was a disaster. I don't think they've done VR since. They probably should try to get back into it. Now would be a good time. Maybe later into the Switch 2's life, or whatever they're going to call this console. Anyways, then we have 1996, where Nintendo decides to come back hard, and they drop the Nintendo 64. And this console is named after its 64-bit CPU. I remember at the time, I was, again, just a kid. I was in middle school, I think, at this time. And Taco Bell was giving these away. And oh my god, I had my grandparents take me there pretty much every day after school, just so I could get an entry and to try to win a free one. I'm not sure if that's where I got mine. I think I won something from there, though. But that was, again, years ago, and I'm way too old for that now. Can't remember. Anyways, Mario again shows off being the number one character. We have Mario 64, Super Mario 64. This is a loved game. You can see some gameplay on the screen right now. You can see that I'm absolute trash at it because I'm playing this on the Switch through the Nintendo Online. And yeah. Besides that, we have Mario Kart 64. Fantastic game. Spent many hours playing this one. We have GoldenEye 007, which is a super duper fan favorite game. Everybody loves this one who's ever played it. It's a great shooter. Back in the day, you could enjoy the times of screen watching where your buddy's just seeing where you're at on the map and coming over and killing you because it's hard to play fair. Then we also had The Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. This is, at this point, like Zelda, the original one was a pretty big hit. The second one, it's different. It's an RPG in a way, with side-scrolling battles. It wasn't for everyone. I understand that. I love it. It is crazy hard. But Ocarina of Time was probably the game that made, I mean, it's one of the best games ever made. It's still rated that way, and I think it will probably forever be rated that way. But this is the game that made Zelda so important to Nintendo. Like, absolutely. It sold a ton of copies. And then plus you have the remake, which came out on later systems, or not remake, but re-release, remaster, port, whatever you want to call it. And that also sold a ton of copies. Came out for a couple different systems. Anyways, moving on to 1998, we have the Game Boy Color. And this is when you start to see Nintendo is not only great with home consoles, they're amazing with the handhelds. They know how to keep two markets alive at once. And they know how to focus what games onto what system, like what platform. And one cool thing about this is the first console, and I think the only console Nintendo's ever put out that dropped in all countries in the same year. It's pretty impressive, especially for being 1998. Let's see, the top games we have here. We have Pokemon Generation 2, which is Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Following that up, we have Pokemon Pinball, which never thought it would be that big, but apparently it was a big seller. And then we have Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, which, again, Mario has to show his face up there. Can't knock that. Moving on, we have the GameCube, which released in 2001. Now, this was... It wasn't their best-selling console. It's a console that I love. I got many years out of it. First time I played it, which made me want to buy one, was I was at McDonald's. And the McDonald's that was in my area, they had a couple video game systems in their play area, which was pretty pretty epic, and at that time unheard of, since usually it was just a ball pit and crawling through some tunnels and whatnot. But GameCube is a very underrated console. It had decent online connectivity because you could play games like, what is it called? Phantasy Star Online, episodes 1 and 2. You could play those online, which is pretty epic. But this is also where a Nintendo 64 title got its sequel finally, and it proved that it has staying power. The top-selling game for the GameCube was Super Smash Bros. Melee. And this is a controversial thing to say currently. The newest one of these games is called Ultimate, and it's not the best. That game is hot trash. If you go back and play Melee, play even the original, and feel the movement of the characters, the newest one is trash. It's too floaty, it's too slow, too clunky. And if you watch the computer, they know how to do it, but it looks like they have to move before they need to do anything. That's not good controlling. I don't care what anybody says. You learn how to adapt to it, but I refuse to learn how to play bad controls. It's not in me. Anyways, moving on. We also had Mario Kart Double Dash, which is Mario Kart at this point is a solid title. We've had it for several consoles, and we've had it on the handhelds as well. It's cemented itself as being one of the best series of games for Nintendo. And then, we can't leave him out, Super Mario Sunshine. Another Super Mario game, this one a little bit different. Instead of basically just jumping on enemies like you would in every other game, you have a water jetpack, and you're basically trying to get rid of the way I look at it is like you're Captain Planet Mario. You're getting rid of the pollution, which is crazy. But we also have some other games on here that need to be talked about. I already mentioned Phantasy Star Online, but we have the best RPG of all time, Skies of Arcadia Legends. This was a Dreamcast game, Sega Dreamcast, but got ported over to the GameCube as Legends. And this game is fantastic. If you have a GameCube and you can find this game and it's not going to cost you like over $100, pick this one up. Pick this one up. Alright. Also in 2001, we had the Game Boy Advance. What was cool about the Game Boy Advance is it could connect to your GameCube, which there were games that came with that had that connectivity. You would have it's Legend of Zelda, The Four Swords. That one you could each plug in, you and your friends could plug in your Game Boy Advances and use those as your controller to add more characters to your game, so you could have all 4 swords. It was pretty awesome. 4 different colored links. For this one, we have top sellers being basically just Pokemon. We had Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, and Pokemon Emerald, which I feel like that's kind of cheating throwing it in there since it's part of Ruby and Sapphire, but Wikipedia gave it its own line, so let's honor it. And it's the best Pokemon. Don't care what anybody says. You get Ralt super early. I mean, how is that not one of the best Pokemon games? Anyways, moving on to 2004, we have the DS. We have New Super Mario Brothers, Nintendogs, which I'm surprised that was a big seller, but people love their pets, so why not? I think there was also that big scare recently where someone online was saying like, hey, by the way, all your Nintendogs died or something like that. And it was a lie. They don't die. That'd be pretty grim to do that to like little kids. These games are kind of directed towards a younger generation. I mean, older people are playing them, but a lot of these people played it when they were younger, still have their DS and freaked out about it, and it's like, you're doing to that someone who's looking back at their childhood. That's pretty cruel. And if Nintendo made dogs die in that game, that would be pretty sadistic. But yeah, besides that, we also have Mario Kart DS. And then in 2006, we got an absolute powerhouse of a system. I mean, it's not the most powerful system, but for what it did for Nintendo, it is an extreme powerhouse. We have the Wii. The top selling game on this was Wii Sports, And I feel like that's kind of a cheat, since I don't know about everybody else's version of the copy, or like copy, what do you want to call it, sell of the console came with this, like mine did. So it's hard to say you actually bought the game. Most people probably would go out and buy the game, because besides Wii Sports, we had Mario Kart Wii, which of course Mario Kart's going to be on there, but we had Wii Sports Resort, which is also just Wii Sports. It's definitely needs to be the most popular game on the system. It's what everybody played. It was a game that brought the family together. It brought friends together. Back when I was in rehab for Guillain-Barré, trying to get the ability to walk again, this is what me and one of my therapists did. We went into the room and we played Wii Sports. We did some bowling, because that requires standing and moving and stuff, and it was impactful. But also playing with family was great. Playing tennis, playing just everything on it. It is a fantastic game. People can have fun. You can turn it into a drinking game. Like, play tennis and whoever misses takes a drink. I mean, don't kill yourself with drinking, but, you know, you can have fun with this game. It was a great time. We need something back like that, and sadly I don't think the newer one was quite that, but I mean, you could probably still have fun with it. But yeah, the Wii was all motion controls. You had some bad games on there because the motion controls were great. Like, if you compare it to other consoles at the time, the motion controls for the Wii, fantastic. But you still had some hard flops. There's a Dragon Quest game that came out on it. I'll put its name up on the screen because I can't think of it right now. But it was bad. It was bad. Another YouTuber that I like to watch, Eric Landon, he did a video on this one. You can see him swinging his nunchuck around, his Wiimote, and it's just not picking it up. And that's pretty much how it is. You'll swing left and right because it's telling you to slash left and right, and it's not picking up. Slash at an angle, and it's just not picking up, and you're just getting hit for no reason. I don't know. That was probably one of the worst ones besides the Soul Calibur. I did not like that on the Wii either. But I mean, overall, it was a fantastic system. It had great games that pretty much made up for it. You had Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. That was heavy use of the Wiimote, because you did control Link's sword whenever you moved it. And you had to like thrust the Wiimote up into the sky in order to make him like charge up his sword. And that was pretty epic. Like, I liked that. The Wiimote controls were pretty accurate for that one. I'm not sure why some games just flopped with the Wiimote. Yeah, let's move on to 2011 with the 3DS. So the DS being a big, super big successful hit, one of the best-selling, or the best-selling handheld at the time. Nintendo came back with not really a revision, but a enhancement, like a new version of this. And this one also, some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. I mean, most people, to be honest, just played it like a regular DS. It had the option to turn on 3D, which the 3D was kind of gimmicky because you had to look at this thing the right way. You have it a little bit off to the side, it's going to look bad, you're going to get a headache after a while. But I mean, it was decent 3D. Just make sure you're holding your console perfect. I'm not a fan of that. But yeah, I was one of the ones who played this purely in the DS version. Just turn off that 3D switch and you're good to go. Top games we had here: Mario Kart 7, Pokemon X and Y, and then Pokemon Sun and Moon. Again, Pokemon showing how very important it is to Nintendo, and is same with Mario Kart. Just another top-selling game. This is where these games are meant to be. Moving on to 2012, we have the Wii U. Now, I mentioned the flop earlier of the Virtual Boy. Wii U wasn't as bad of a flop, but it was still very unsuccessful. With this one, we do have some big games, but a lot of these big games also moved over to the system after this, which was needed. The Wii was a big success, and Nintendo kind of wanted to feed off of that. So they were like, well, what can we do to make a new version of the Wii? And they were like, oh, we know. Let's get rid of the Wiimotes that everybody likes, and let's give them another screen. Now, this isn't a handheld system. It's a home console you hook up to your TV, and you have another screen, which is your controller in your hand. Now, there were some games that I feel use this properly. We have Zombie U, which you would do like things on your handheld, like picking a lock and whatnot, while the TV would show behind you, so you could see like if a zombie's coming up behind you. That was a pretty cool use of it. That game, probably one of the dopest games on the Wii U. Besides that, we had Xenoblade Chronicles X, which another fantastic game. The only thing that made me mad about that is it took me so long to find it because it was a GameStop exclusive, I believe. And I kept going to all these other like third-party stores that were closer to me. That made me mad. Anyways, the top-selling games we had on here was Mario Kart 8, Super Mario World, or Super Mario 3D World, and then Super Mario Brothers, New Super Mario Brothers U. These names are getting so convoluted. Anyways, the reason this flopped is the same reason the DS, I think, didn't have as many hardware cells as it could have. These game companies, like the game developer studios, they don't want to have to make a special game for a gimmick. It's a big turnoff. And it's like the DS, it required 2 screens. And at first that turned developers off. But then they were just like, oh, we can just put like our game's logo on the bottom screen and just use the top screen. We'll do that. It defeats the purpose of having the dual screen, but at least that was a way for them to be able to make the game for this console. With the Wii U being basically just for the 2 screens, it was, again, studios were just like, well, you made something and we want nothing to do with it. Also, consumers looked at that and they were like, you made something and we want nothing to do with it. And sadly, that's the history of the Wii U. It was just a interesting idea that flopped hard. And that brings us to the current ages. We have what I'm going to call the Master Console. We have the Nintendo Switch. You can't see my screen right now, but in it I have Mario and Luigi Brothership. Been playing that like crazy. That game is fun. Don't listen to these stupid gripes. Like, the biggest gripe I've seen with this game is just mind-numbing. You guys can change the button that Luigi's connected to. And no, I mean, if you want to jump on while run around a map, he's still B. But what people are upset about is in battle, to confirm his attack, like when you're just pressing, like, for Mario, you'd press A, like if you want to do the jump attack, and then you press A on the enemy. Well, you do the same thing with Luigi, and it used to be on the other games, it was press B to do everything for Luigi. And people are griping about that. Now, when it comes to, like, actually doing your move, because it's timed hits, you do still use B for Luigi. So I don't understand the complaints. That is such a small little change and people are blowing up about it like it's the end of the world. Absolutely insane. Anyways, the Switch dropped in 2017, and then we got the revision, which is the Switch Lite. Switch Lite, the Joy-Cons aren't removable. It's just a handheld system that plays Switch games. The Switch, it also can't dock. The Switch can be hooked up to the TV. It can be played handheld. It can be played as a kickstand, like its own screen. Just pop out the kickstand and you're good to go. It's it's an all-around super functional console. It was a huge hit. Like it's a massive hit. If a certain person named Jim Ryan hadn't just like said, "Oh yeah, well now that Nintendo Switch is selling well, we're gonna say that the PlayStation 2 sold more copies," we would probably be getting much closer to the point to where the Switch is going to overtake the PS2 and become the best selling console of all time. I mean, heck, at this point, we're waiting for the announcement of the Switch 2. And that very well may be the console that becomes the best selling console of all time. I know I'm hyped for it. Other Nintendo fans are hyped for it. Fans that don't play the Switch but want to gripe about how underwhelmingly powerful the Switch 2 is going to be are probably going to buy it themselves because they're just trolls online. But yeah, the top selling games we have here, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This is the same game that came out for Wii U, but with some enhancements, and it's been continually updated. I mean, this launched for the Wii U, and it's been just continually updated to the point where I think it was early 2024 this year, we had a new, like a final update for this, like new maps and new racers and whatnot. It's insane that they've kept this game alive for so long, and it is their biggest selling game. Just, it's massive. Besides that, we had the game of COVID, which is called Animal Crossing New Horizons. This game got a massive boost. Animal Crossing was a mildly big title, but then we had COVID-19 happen, and it seemed like the world just found this game. They're like, hey, this is the greatest game ever. Let's all play it. I wasn't into it. I do like my casual games, but I prefer Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, where, I don't know, they're still cute, but I feel more like a farmer than just a decorator. I don't know just how to say that. Then we have Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That was the third best-selling game, or is the third best-selling game. And again, I've talked about my complaints about this game. It's whatever. People love it. It's still big in like the tournament scene. Good for them. I mean, I'm glad people like it. It's just, it's not my cup of tea. I fell off that game with, I think it was the GameCube. That was the last time I enjoyed one. It's whatever. But yeah. And so, like I said, we're waiting for the Switch 2. It's eventually going to come out. It is going to be a just absolute powerhouse of a console for Nintendo. I'm not saying it's going to be the strongest. Apparently, it's supposed to be, at least, here's the rumor mill nonsense. So, it's apparently going to be around a PS4 for power, which is cool. I mean, we're hoping that Capcom again helped out, because Capcom helped out with the Switch. They were going to put in like 2 megabits of RAM, and they were told by Capcom, like, hey, put 4. And so they did, and that made the Switch as good as it is now. I'm hoping they put like 8 to 16. Either of those are great numbers. It would help give us more power to this console, better games, newer games. And I'm not saying like the Switch can't do newer games. They've done a few. They just kind of tweak the graphics a bit. I mean, I'm not going to complain about it. Hogwarts Legacy, fantastic game. It's beautiful on PS5, beautiful on PC. I got it for the Switch, and I love that game. It's one of the best games ever on the Switch. I mean, it's done like The Witcher. The Witcher, instead of being like a huge open world, Witcher 3, it's more segmented. So you'll have like a hub here, and then you get to a loading screen, which on the regular other versions like PS4, you just move straight down the road to the next town. But it's whatever. It made it work for the Switch. I think that's a fantastic way to do something. If you have to make some changes to make it work on the console, make those changes. That's not like any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a controversial change. It's opening the door for more accessibility. I approve of it. It's not anything bad. If anybody complains about it being bad because of that, they need to get a life, go touch grass and realize it's what made it work. It helps sell more copies of a game you love. Quit griping. Anyways, yeah. The Switch 2 is going to be fantastic. It should just be an enhanced version of the Switch, essentially, just a much stronger version of it. It's going to be able to be backwards compatible. If the renderings we saw earlier this year were anything close to accurate, it will play not just the digital library backwards compatible, but it's going to be able to play the physical games backwards compatible, which hopefully it does it kind of like we've seen the other consoles do, the PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles, where it kind of boosts the games. It doesn't have to be like an extreme boost. I mean, again, we're talking about Switch games, but at least sharpen them up a bit. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, pretty games on the Switch, but if we can get them a little bit prettier, that would be great. That would take off some of the fuzziness to it. It's not like the Vaseline effect like we see on PS5 games that are called Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, but it's just like some weird fuzz on it. But it'll sharpen it up, make it look great. Kind of like apparently like I said, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is supposed to look on the PS5 Pro. It's supposed to be shiny. It's supposed to look really good. I think the game's trash. It's 99% filler, but that's just my factual opinion. But yeah, Nintendo's a great company. It's been around forever. It revived the gaming market at one point, and it's kept strong. They're also just doing their own thing. They've never been involved in the console wars, technically they fought against Sega, but they really didn't. They just kept doing their own thing, and they ended up winning, if you want to call it a win. They never really battled against Sony, even though Sony only exists because Nintendo kind of told them to go eat dirt. Because they were going to make a console together. It was going to be fantastic. I wish that would have happened. Anyways, they never really battled against Sony. They never battled against Xbox. They've just been doing their own thing. They've even come out and said, hey, we don't want to be part of this conversation about which is the best. We're just doing our own thing. And I think that's great. Let them keep doing their own thing. Let them just stay Nintendo. I don't want them to try to battle with Xbox and be like, oh, well, we can have a better online service that's just the only place you can play your games because we don't want to promote selling games. Or like Sony, where they're just like, we're just going to focus purely on graphics. We don't need 28K graphics. Keep it how it is. A game isn't good based off of how graphical it is. It's the gameplay that matters. And that's one thing Nintendo seems to understand. It needs to have good gameplay and be fun. We don't play games to be outraged. We play games to have fun. And Nintendo understands fun is what sells. Like I said, Brothership. Brothership may not be everybody's favorite Mario and Luigi RPG series game, but God, the more I play it, the more I realize this is one of the best. First one is always going to be the best one. That's just my opinion. But this is definitely number 2. This game is super fun to play. The story, the writing's not as bad as people said it was. I don't know where they got that from. The stories for these games are always nonsensical. But it's a great, fun game. I enjoy doing the battles, even when I, for some reason, lose my mind and try to jump with Mario using B, and it just doesn't work. It's what we need in the gaming world. We need fun. Like even the newest Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the best-selling Pokemon games, they got trashed. They got trashed online because they had graphical errors, which most of them got fixed. A lot of those errors that originally came out that were like extremely insane were from multiplayer, and people weren't being honest about that. Other ones where you can make your Pokemon, I think it was disappear, the rideable Pokemon. And that was something I tried to replicate. I finally got it. You have to do that to yourself. You have to kind of almost try to make that happen. And you can get it. And it fixes itself. But yeah, that game had its issues, but you know what it was? It was fun. People miss that. They're just like, oh, well, we can find something to complain about. Let's not talk about the fact that the game is fun. So pretty much I can say here, Nintendo is not an issue when it comes to the state of gaming. They're not perfect. They do their wrong things. They have lawsuits going on right now I don't approve of. I mean, one of them shows that they're just being petty, and that's sad. I wish they would really look at that and see how that reflects on them. Because me as a consumer, that makes me look... I don't look as highly on Nintendo because of this. Like, Pal World is a fun game. It's its own thing. That also is a lawsuit that I think is caused because of people. Because people decide to label it as Pokemon with guns. That's a great way to start an argument. You guys are geniuses. Geniuses. People can't just stay quiet and just call it like, hey, it's a monster collector with guns. Nope, can't do that. Can't think logically. Sad times, man. Sad times. Yeah, Nintendo's not a problem in the gaming industry as a whole. They help keep it alive. They understand fun. They don't want to battle with anybody. And, I mean, I approve that. That's a good way to do it. Like, they don't want to fight with any of the other game makers, I should say, console makers. But yeah, that's my history of Nintendo and how I feel it fits into the state of gaming. So let me know what you think about this. Are you a Nintendo fan? Do you play the Switch as much as I do? I mean, ever since I got it, it's been my number one console. I pretty much stopped playing my PS4 once I got it because I found something I can play handheld or hook up to my TV if I want. It's a great time. Yeah, let me know what you think, and until next time, you take care. Hey, thanks for watching.
Give us a like if you enjoyed it, and dislike it if you didn't.
Let us know what you think about the channel.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Tell your mom.